say that it was a little bit of false advertising because I will not tell you what plants to plant. If I told you what plants to plant without knowing anything about sun, shade, wet, dry, level, sloping, it would be like telling you what to wear or what to eat or, heaven forbid, who to vote for. So I will be happy to cite some of my favorite plants for certain conditions, but what I want to show you today is where you can get support and services for plants that are things you're going to want to plant and things you're going to want to incorporate into your landscaping by biodiversifying where you are. So I'm going to go through this really super fast and then be very happy to take questions. We have a phenomenal native plant movement in the St. Louis region. We have been recognized by Doug Tallamy, author of Nature's Best Hope and Bringing Nature Home. And these are the two really good books you want to get if you want to read about ecological landscaping. He is one of the national experts. He is the guru of native plants. He's an entomologist, a bug guy from the University of Delaware, and has openly across the country recognized the fact that we are leading the way among communities in our native plant movement. And so this is, native plants needs us to change our aesthetics. It needs us to change the values of how we want our environment to look and what we're willing to do to suck up to the needs of our environment. Because this, which we have inherited as an ethic from, say, the Crawleys of Downton Abbey, this is not only not sustainable for climate and chemicals and soil health and all of that kind of stuff, but it supports nothing. No one lives in grass. Don't get me started on turf. So I have organized this presentation. I actually created this for the Texas Master Naturalist Conference, which I got to speak to last week. I was very thrilled with that. Taproots, 3 taproots of success, deep sort of cornerstones of success of the native plant movement in our area. Grow Native is our originally statewide, now managed by the Missouri Prairie Foundation, a nonprofit. It was launched by Missouri Conservation Department with our tax dollars at work. Grow Native, celebrating 20 years this year of cultivating this culture of native plants with the public, with the landscape professionals, with, to some extent, with regulation, and not so much regulation, but just, moving the needle in the direction of ecological landscaping. One of the best, if not the best, native plant programs in the USA, in my humble opinion. Missouri Prairie Foundation now manages it. You can find them online at grownative.org. And they have planting plans, which is where you go to look to see what kind of plants to put in a little island. Out at garden centers, look for purple. Look for purple pots and purple and green tags on plants. And that's how you will know that these are native plants. This is not a native plant, this is a fleece plant. But the purple pots are a clue. And then the Grow Native Resource Guide is something you can get online. You can get print copies. If you're a Grow Native member, you can advertise your services as a landscape designer or planner or landscape architect within another firm. If you're a grower, if you're a distributor, retail, or wholesale, all of that is in the Grow Native Resource Guide. It's terrific, and it's purple. The second of the two taproots is St. Louis Audubon Society's Bring Conservation Home program. BCH was launched I believe it was launched in 2012, and adapted its work from, and you can find it at stlouisaudubon.org/BCH, adapted a program methodology from the Portland, Oregon Audubon chapter. What happens is you pay a very modest fee. There's a graduated fee depending on the size of your property as a residential owner, or a $100 fee if you are a commercial property. And out to your place will come at least 2, sometimes 3 trained habitat advisors. These are master gardeners, master naturalists, members of the organization Wild Ones, which is aptly named. We have a very active chapter here in St. Louis, similar to the level of activity and veracity of USGBC Mole Gateway. They will evaluate your property for the kinds of things I mentioned earlier. Is it sunny? Is it sloping? Is it shady? Not only that, what's the aesthetics of your neighborhood? How much biodiversity will your area tolerate? And then you will get a written report of everything native anything invasive, and you will get plans, suggestions to biodiversify your property. It is a fabulous program. And in 2020, even with COVID, they are on track to reach the milestone of over 1,400 landowner participants and over 600 acres of potential habitat developed. And I've now lost my cursor. Okay, number 3 of the 3 taproots, the Whitmire Wildflower Garden at Shaw Nature Reserve. Oh my God, it is so beautiful. And it is where we can go to see prairie, bog, woodland, wetland, native plants in situ, in beautifully tended situations. The Whitmire Wildflower Garden, learn more at shawnature.org, just 35 miles out of St. Louis. You can drive out there and enjoy the foliage and have a lovely day walking around. It was a birthday gift from industrialist Blanton Whitmire for his wife Peg's 70th birthday. And part of that gift involved endowing the garden and endowing the position of a curator of native plants at Shaw Nature Reserve, who is Scott Woodbury, the young guy in this photo. He is here in St. Louis at Shaw Nature Reserve, a national expert on native plants. So we see this stuff, and research and trialing has been taking place at Shaw Nature Reserve with native plants. It's a big, big deal. They're also doing a lot of ecological restoration at Shaw Nature Reserve and have a seed bank out there. So it's at Shaw that from us at the Missouri Botanical Garden, all the native plant stuff is really emphasized. You can see a little bit of natives at the main garden, but you know, we got to do what everybody enjoys at the main garden. So we have, yes, boxwoods and petunias and many hostas. Also at Shaw Nature Reserve, the Native Plant School, volunteer opportunities. These are little snapshots of the kinds of things you can see around the Whitmire Wildflower Garden, patio garden, container gardening, tiny little corner prairie gardens. And if you are enjoying this super fast version of this talk, please bring me to your workplace or your community group to give the full version of this talk, which I would love to do. What I call the feeder roots of success to our native plant movement in St. Louis. A number of things that are stretching out in the soil and really supporting this native plant movement that is thriving. And I have some shout outs to several of you in this. Biodiversity St. Louis is a network of organizations that are all working toward something to proliferate biodiversity. Back in 2012, Peter Wise Jackson, president of the Missouri Botanical Garden, came to a little group of us and said, biodiversity initiative, make it so. It's like Jean-Luc Picard showed up in a conference room, and we did it. Around the kitchen table with no funding and no plan, we looked around and saw, holy moly, there's all these organizations doing stuff with biodiversity in our area. Let's bring them together as a network, and let's get all the boats to rise in this. And when in 2017, 1STL, our regional sustainability plan, included biodiversity as one of the target areas. Emily is the leader of the energy target area, which is just rocking. I was on the biodiversity team. Our target is to have, by 2025, 100% of the counties in the regional area, the greater region, use an atlas of biodiversity data to guide planning and land use decisions. And that is in the works. It will be an ArcGIS hub. It will network with federal and state data sources. It will network with the incredible resources of East West Gateway Council of Governments, who are map mavens, in the works. If you'd like to get information about this, biodiversitystl.org, sign up for our e-news. It's bi-monthly. It's really good. No zealots will call on you. Pollinator gardening is off the charts in popularity. This launched, frankly, from the city of St. Louis. Thank you, Catherine Werner. Back in 2014, the city's 250th anniversary, when the Milkweeds for Monarchs, the St. Louis Butterfly Project, endeavored to get 250 monarch gardens planted that year, 50 on city property, 200 asking for that from residents and private property owners. Not to be outdone, St. Louis County launched Project Pollinator. And so all over our region, people have just been going bananas for pollinator gardening, for attracting and understanding pollinators. And monarchs are the keystone species for that, frankly. They're not yet on the endangered species list. Ameren, our investor-owned electric utility, is looking at switching how they manage their properties, all their throughways of utility corridors to become biodiversity corridors, driven in no small part by a collective of utilities and other corridor property managers to avoid getting the monarch on the endangered species list. And from the Donald Danforth Plant Science Center up there in the upper left-hand corner, to little habitats in and around people's gardens, to tiny little, pocket things like the one in the lower left. This is what people are doing. Where can you get the plants? Answer: everywhere throughout the growing season. Kirkwood Farmers Market, native plant sales. Even this year in the era of COVID, there were order in advance, drive up and pick up native plant sales. And yes, that is Emily Andrews and myself spending $500 from a Grow Native grant in 2001. We couldn't spend the whole $500 getting native plants for the Earthways home where we worked at the time. That was so fun. And that work launched me back in the early 2000s on my personal love affair with native plants, and I have never looked back. When you buy local, you can grow native. And our local network of garden centers have embraced the native plant movement. They're the ones with the purple pots and the purple growing areas. They're the ones that promote things like the pollinator palette from Greenscape Gardens. They're the ones that keep up with the trends and that educate you when you go out there about what's native and what would be the best choices for you. And then you see down here the catalog of Missouri Wildflower Nursery, our state's largest grower of native plants. And boy, get this, keep this in your bathroom or wherever, because this is a treasure trove of color photos of, whoops, and a plant list that can't be beat, of color photos of native plants. So if you have sun or shade or wet or dry or whatever, you can actually see the plants and then order them, go and get them. And there are a number of other growers of native plants. Where do you see them? Answer: increasingly more and more places. City Garden is 100% landscape with natives. Missouri Botanical Garden advised on this. It's a very, very formal planting scheme to complement the contemporary artistry and the, all the little fountains and the things that kids can play in the summer, which is such a gracious gift to the city of St. Louis of art and open space. And it is 100% native. So the thinking about native plants is often, oh, we have a little prairie. Prairie is not for everyone. I have 99.75% shade in my yard. All of my flowering prairie plants have croaked because there's not enough sunlight. So this year when I ordered plants, I looked down the list and went for shade, wet, and that's all I got. Finally got realistic. Where else can you see native plants? Brightside has a fabulous demonstration garden right in the city of St. Louis. Walk right in there and enjoy it. There's the Whitmar Wildflower Garden out at Shaw Nature Reserve. The Forest Park Master Plan biodiversified the park in huge measure and continues to do so with contributions from leading companies like SWT Design and DJM Ecological. So when you're on the golf course, of course, you're going to have greens. But when you're in the areas of Forest Park that ought to be more ecologically landscaped, they are. And Forest Park Forever manages this with rockin' skill sets. Out at the Donald Danforth Plant Sciences Center, I saw that Laurel Harrington had registered for this call. Laurel was a key designer of this. Olive Street Road, middle of St. Louis County, middle of Boxwood and Petunia Land. You drive down this main drag and you see ecology growing outside one of the premier scientific research institutions of our area. This is a big marriage between plant science and plant ecology, and we need all of that. And this, Catherine Werner, do you recognize this? This is a tiny little prairie encased in growing within the limits of the space between a driveway and a sidewalk. This was outside Catherine Werner's home in Clayton before she moved to the city when she became the city's sustainability officer. And I'm proud to say that my husband Dale and I adopted a blue false indigo when Catherine was adopting these plants out when she moved. And it is thriving at our house. We had to take down a piece of hardscaping, but we have just enough sun for it now. You can have natives in tiny spaces in very conservative areas and make them work. But design is key, and that's business development for our green industry and for our design sectors. And we need this to transform the aesthetics and the values and the regulations of homeowner associations. In the corporate landscape, native plants are money savers, not necessarily for the homeowner, and there's no such thing as a maintenance-free landscape. When Alberici Constructors was going for the highest level LEED Platinum rating in the world, they had to get every single mother-loving point in the site management. They had to keep every drop of stormwater on that site, and they did. And at that time, there was only one firm, GGM Ecological, that could do that work. Today, there is a proliferation of firms that can maintain its native landscape solutions, that does the maintenance here now, and that can design and install, and are also working to grow plants, cultivate seed stock. This is the leading edge of business development in our green industry. And the cost savings for a property manager to get some of that property out of the flip and turf and turn it into ecological landscaping can be documented easily. Another big driver of the native plant culture, rainscaping, capturing stormwater, managing stormwater. Native plants are the workhorses of rainscaping of all kinds, whether that's rain gardens or lawn alternatives or woodland edges, any of those kinds of things. Even up on vegetative roofs, you can have some native plants along with the sedums, and there are some native variety of sedums. And when you biodiversify the common areas within an office park or a condo development or some kind of thing like this, instead of having grass you have to mow and a bunch of geese pooping on the sidewalk, you actually have habitat that is interesting and lively and thriving. And what Doug Talmy is asking us to do with his work in Nature's Best Hope is transform 75% of the turf that we currently slavishly work for into habitat to preserve insect species and biodiversify our properties. Kudos, big hats off to MSD, Metropolitan Sewer District Project Clear. They fulfilled the terms of a Clean Water Act out of compliance lawsuit filed by the Missouri Coalition for the Environment to launch Project Clear and follow the lead of the Deer Creek Watershed Alliance in making small grants to property owners to do rainscaping. We created a hub of that information at the Missouri Botanical Garden. This is our rainscaping homepage. And now all over the area, commercial and residential property owners are using the power of plants to manage the precious resource of stormwater and not have that run off and get lost and become a problem in combined sewer overflows. As a professional development advantage, native plants, again, ecological landscaping are the leading edge. The Shaw Professional Series has featured the work of engineering firms, design, maintenance firms. Little bit of a setback this year from COVID, but this will continue to be a regular continuing education offering, and it allows our professionals that are working in this area to showcase designs in places like Old North St. Louis and Webster University and Forest Park and the Donald Danforth Plant Sciences Center and more. And this is my favorite. This is the training ground of the native plant experts and the professionals up and coming in this leading edge of the green industry, our community college district. When Merrimack converted their horticulture program from only boxwoods and petunias and ornamentals and, you know, the kind of thing that you normally learn in a horticulture training program to emphasize ecological landscaping, enrollment went off the charts. Nursing and horticulture are the areas of the community college where enrollment is really rocking. Over 80% of the students in this program have jobs before they graduate. And these students are learning the key skills to design, to install, to maintain. These are skills that we need. They are skills that cannot be outsourced. They do need labor as well as skilled leadership. And you get to learn to do things like set your landscape on fire. How much fun is that? This is way more interesting than just mowing grass. And it's what we are turning to in our native plant movement. So these are some of the ways that we need to advance the movement further. Identifying and controlling invasive species. The Missouri Invasive Plant Task Force is working on doing this in ways that don't penalize landowners. Engaging municipalities to encourage property owners to have native plants and get out of the realm of weed ordinances and get into the area of promoting ecological landscaping. Working with our utilities and our transportation agencies to manage those corridors for wildlife as well as power lines. Ecological pest control, especially for mosquitoes. When you plant for pollinators, you can't spray for pests because bug spray kills bugs. Working on this too from Biodiversity. Using data, that's BiomeSTL, our 1STL, biodiversity goal atlas, and much more. It is a business opportunity. It is a fabulously fun area to connect with nature. And in this year of COVID, we have had such a motivation to reconnect with nature, and native plants, ecological landscaping is the way to go. You can hear a bunch of cool interviews that I've done on my show, Earthworms, including a 20th anniversary celebration with Carol David, who heads Missouri Prairie Foundation. Go to biodiversitystl.org and subscribe to our e-news. We can answer your questions on sustainable living at the Green Resources Info Service at Missouri Botanical Garden. And did I say I give workplace talks on this subject? I do, and I love it. And I will talk about recycling and changing your light bulbs, yes, but this is much more fun for me. So I'm going to leave this up here for a minute so you can all get it, and I'll take questions now. Thank you. And a breath. Brandon, any questions in the chat? Oh, lots in the chat.
I don't have any question. I just wanted to give another shout out for the Bring Conservation Home program. My family and I did, it was like $25 out in St. Louis County. It was so cheap. The report is 20 pages and I refer back to it all the time. Every year as I'm taking invasive or non-diverse, non-native species and replacing them, I refer back to it all the time. So it was a great resource, awesome, easy, cost-effective, and I refer back to it all the time. So,
I see your kitty ears.
Yes.
It's actually a little bit more expensive now. It's $30 if your property is small, and the price split has to do with how large your property is and whether you're an Audubon member or whether you're not. And if you're not, I believe it's 40 and 80 depending on your property size, and then you get a membership for a year in St. Louis Audubon, and you support that effort. It's a phenomenal program.
Yeah, and the one year that since we've done and made just small changes, our bird count has gone up tremendously, and we've seen so many more frogs and bugs, and it's been pretty awesome.
Yes, yes. I'm sorry, Nicole, I will not be able to share these slides because I don't have permission to, pass them out. And also it's kind of, it's a piece of creative work. So I would be very happy to give a presentation at ABNA if you'd like to have you and your colleagues hear more about this, but I'm not able to share these slides. Cultivar is like the term cultivar. So in the plant industry, in the green industry, plant breeders are always looking for something new. It started with Gregor Mendel and it never stopped. And this is not all the way to genetic engineering, it's just plant breeding. So when you take a native plant, like say a ninebark, which is a little flowering, small growing, white flowering spring shrub, and you breed it for a different color foliage, ninebark Diablo is a cultivar of the straight native ninebark that has purple leaves. But when you change things like the color of the foliage, you may change the chemical composition of that plant that has evolved a beneficial relationship with pollinators and other insects over millennia. So when we tinker with the pretty stuff, the color of the flowers, the color of the leaves, the size of the plant, how big does it get? We tinker with the relationship that native plant has as an anchor of biodiversity, with insect life first, and then on up the chain with the birds that rely on insects for things like larvae to feed baby birds. So nativar, there's a lot of debate in the ecological landscaping movement about the value of nativars versus the straight natives. I would say go for the straight natives first and augment them like you would in a more plant-based diet. Just have a little bit of sausage in your casserole. I hope everybody's looking at the chat here. There's some really good comments. Making progress with regional municipalities adopting ordinances. Chris, that's a good question. Ordinances are not necessarily the first line of action within municipal interactions, because people frankly don't like government telling them what to do. So an ordinance that encourages native plants, a best practice ordinance, Maryland Heights is a good example of that, is better than one that says you can only have this and this and this and this kind of plant. There is one municipality that has that, a native plant list as their ordinance. working with municipalities, we are making progress. We had a seminar with planners and land use managers back in March, got it in right before COVID shutdown, when Doug Tallamy, the author of Nature's Best Hope, was here. And we got those land use people, this is a biodiversity effort, to hear from the guy about the importance of native plants. And then we had breakout sessions facilitated by local biodiversity advocates that address things like cost, availability of plants, what are the problems you have, what needs do you have? So the relationships, I would say we've had a couple of tea dances, but we haven't started going steady yet with the municipal land use managers. And through the Green Cities Challenge, part of the St. Louis Green Business Challenge, which I mentioned, also through Biodiversity St. Louis, and through the rollout of Biome STL, our atlas of data, we're looking at making those relationships stronger with municipalities. Always happy to talk to people in municipalities about what they have and what they could improve. Question about Webster Grove's higher density housing development along Shady Grove Creek. I don't know that answer, but I would be happy to research that for you, Linda, if you would email me at greenresources@mobot.org. I am the Green Resources Manager for the garden, and those emails to Green Resources go right to me, and can dig around a little, to get you some more information. Plants that I love that you cannot miss with. Prairie dropseed is a very well-mannered grass. You can use it to border your property. It does okay in semi-shade, not in deep shade. Anything that's going to flower in the natives, almost anything, needs full sun. You want to plant in layers. You want to have low stuff. You want to have some bushes. You want to have a tree or two for interest. If you're going to plant any tree, if you can only get one tree, what genus should you go to, ladies and jelly spoons? Quercus, the oaks. Get an oak. In the entire genus Quercus, the oak genus, any oak will host between 600 and 900 different species of insect larvae, which are essential as the underpinnings of the food web, compared to, say, a ginkgo, which is native to China, a wonderful street tree, but it's not from here. It doesn't have those ecological relationships, and therefore it will host between 1 and 6 species of larvae. You will not see those larvae, but birds will. And we need, as E.O. Wilson says, the little things that rule the world, the insects that are so seriously endangered, to reweave our impacts on the food web. Do I like talking about native plants? Yes, I love it. And I love messing around with them. They are fun, fun, fun. And they are a critical underpinning of water conservation, biodiversity, a more interesting place for us to live, especially as we can't be tooling around all the time because of COVID-19. And you have some fabulous resources within the ranks of USGBC members that understand and are practicing these kinds of things.
Any last questions? It is 10:30. You can feel free to unmute yourself or type it in the chat. But yes, thank you so much, Jean. This was wonderful. I am highly impressed with your speed.
Get this book, Bringing Nature Home. This is the original book by Doug Tallamy. He is the best explainer of why native plants are important and wonderful. And this book is perfect bathroom reading because the first third is Doug Tallamy telling his stuff. He also has some really good little pieces online. He's fun to hear talk. The second third is insects, and the third is trees. So you can look through the other thirds at a glance without having to wade through a lot of text. Bringing Nature Home by Douglas Tallamy, Tallamy, a bug guy. And then grow native. Do it. Get the purple, not the fleece.
Wonderful. Thank you, guys. And thank you, everyone, for joining us this morning. Our next event for the USGBC Missouri Gateway chapter is our BEEP demonstration. So the benchmarking energy efficiency ordinance standard that we just passed there is a portal that is utilized. And I will share that link in the chat. Thank you so much. Does anyone else have anything to say? Thanks, Jean.
My pleasure. Thanks, everybody. Have a swell day. Stay well.
Yes,
vote. Start soon.
And shop your local bookstores. Ooh, yes, Left Flank Books does need some help. Go get your books. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day. Have a great weekend. Bye.